I'm really looking forward to this trip. Some people say it's not very nice in the West, and others say it's wonderful. On television you only see the positive things. I can't wait to see everything with my own eyes. Hopefully it will help to make it all clearer, show me what the West is really like. I've heard that so many people live in London, that it's so crowded. I wonder what it'll be like. What does everyone do there? I've been thinking a lot about it. What will it feel like to be there?
55-year-old Dolma Tsering and 51-year-old Sewang Dolma from Ladakh, or Little Tibet, are on their way to London, heading into the unknown. From the Himalayas to a London suburb in less than one day, Sewang and Dolma, both leaders of Ladakh's Women's Alliance, are exhausted. The trip has been organised by Helena Norberg Hodge, a Swedish-born environmentalist now living in England, who speaks Ladakhi fluently. This is no ordinary tourist trip, but a so-called reality tour.
Right. Sorry, I've got to go now. Alright, bye now.
Staying with a family provides a sense of everyday life in England.
She's saying they always eat together, and they don't, one wouldn't just get up and go, and they wait till everybody's together to eat. So that's a very important thing, is that everyone eats together.
From the first day, the women are exposed to a world dominated by technology. The 20 different wash cycles, for example, all fully automated, that we more or less take for granted, amaze them.
This to start. She's saying that, even with all these things, if you're not happy, if you're feeling lonely, what's the point?
Washing clothes is a much more sociable thing in Ladakh, explains Dolma. We meet up, we laugh, and we have fun. But here, you're on your own. Helena Norberg Hodge's aim is to show what modern life is really like, to try and dispel the misleading impression that the West is some kind of paradise. The tour includes a visit to an old people's home, a type of institution quite alien to Ladakhi culture. All the rooms are individually furnished, the manager explains. The residents bring their own belongings. They even have TV and radio. All this makes it very personal. But the truth is that it's still an institution. There is little joy here, little purpose to life, little community, only waiting to die. Discovering that this woman has lived in the home for many years shocks Dolma and Sewang.
One day you might be glad you did. For a policy this Saturday on ITV1, you could win £500,000 live.
She's surprised that she's saying that someone old has these animals because she thinks of them as toys. They do. She's asking, why would the children not keep her at home, do you think?
Because this lady, she suffers with dementia.
Dementia
and mental health problems.
I've never heard of that illness in Ladakh. I don't think it exists.
For people in the non-industrialized world, the spiritual and psychological poverty of being so lonely and so isolated is one of the biggest and most shocking truths about Western life. And so that, more than anything, can help to establish a balance so that they realize, oh, there is something to be lost. Something that for them is very, very important. This relationship between the old and the young, and more contact with one another.
That's another gentleman. That's Albert. Albert looks like he's Did you want to talk to Albert?
Yeah.
Albert, they would like to know how you're feeling today.
Well, a bit unusual.
Yeah, right. Have you got any grandchildren, Albert?
No, not married.
No. Albert's single man. All right. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing the way Albert and the other residents of the home live causes the two Ladakis, who are both from large extended families, to reflect on their own lives.
Back home in Ladakh, it would be a real sin to disown your parents and send them away. We just couldn't do it. We really couldn't. With us, it doesn't matter whether someone is rich. If you haven't got your family around you, if your grandchildren are not with you, you are poor. Only those people who have their family with them are rich.
Poverty and social exclusion are never far away. This is a very different side of life to the endless leisure and luxury that Dolma and Sewang have heard about back home in Ladakh. They are coming to see that the bright lights and giant advertisements tell only part of this story. It's a massive culture shock, both confusing and upsetting. Sex as a commodity, as a service to be bought and sold, like anything else in the consumer culture. Peep shows and striptease bars. There's nothing like this in Ladakh. Sewang prays that there never will be.
Seeing all this makes me very sad. I don't understand what's going on. Why do people do this? It's so strange. Sex for money, women who sell themselves. We don't know anything like that in Ladakh. It makes me very sad.
But despondency is a feeling that does not last long with Ladakhis. Travelling between London and Leh, the capital of Ladakh, is like stepping into a completely different world. Here, life happens at a more human pace. People take their time with household tasks, just as they do to read a traditional sacred Buddhist text. This is the role of 57-year-old Sonam, Sewang's husband. Stanzin, the 26-year-old daughter, is helping to prepare the butter tea. Traditionally, women in Ladakh enjoy a very high status and are at the centre of the household. Having time to talk to one another, being together as a family, is very important to Sewang, as it is to all Ladakhis. By Ladakhi standards, Sewang's family lead a relatively modern life. Although they have none of the labour-saving machines she has seen in the West, There is running water in the garden, and most of the time there is even electricity. Politically, this former kingdom on the border with China belongs to India, but culturally it is part of Tibet. The river Indus, which is fed by the melted snow and ice from the glaciers, provides water for irrigation. But Ladakh is largely a dry land, a Himalayan desert. The climate is extreme, with temperatures ranging from 30 degrees centigrade in summer to minus 30 degrees in winter. It takes Sewang almost a whole day to get to her village. Her sister-in-law relies on her neighbours to help with the harvest. The Paspun, a grouping of neighbouring houses, is a centuries-old tradition that is still alive in the villages today. For Sewang, this is more than just a duty. It is part of her life. Her parents died quite young, and with them died her dream of becoming a teacher. Instead, she had to look after her brothers and sisters. But today, as she talks about life in the West, she is teaching one of the most vital lessons of all, the value of Ladakhi culture. Her message is a challenging and surprising one. No one is prepared for the stories she tells about her experiences in England. In the high plains of Ladakh, time seems to stand still. Just as their ancestors did thousands of years ago, people live off the land, cultivating the fragile soils up to 4,000 meters above sea level. Accompanied by Helena, Dolma is visiting her mother for the first time since her return from London. No devoted Buddhist ignores the many manis that line the pathways, symbolizing the cycle of life. Dolma, who liked Sewang, is now living with her husband and her children in the capital Leh, grew up here. She misses the countryside and being with her family. The white katak, a silk scarf, is a symbol of honor for respected guests. The 72-year-old aunt is at the center of the family. She is looking after her nephews and nieces, as well as the grandchildren of the household. Here in Ladakh, where the extended family still plays such a prominent role, Dolma's description of the West is hard to believe.
What disturbed me most were the young girls who were offering themselves to strange men for money, and the loneliness of the old people. How they are being treated because no one has time for them. It can't be right. I'm scared that it'll be like that here one day as well. It's so important that our families stay together. It's wrong to just send your own mother away. It's so important to have someone who looks after you when you're old, someone from your own family. And what you say about the young women on the streets, it's just unbelievable.
But times are changing, even in Ladakh. The big extended family is threatened by new, supposedly modern attitudes. While no one would think of putting Dolma's 82-year-old mother into an old people's home, the younger generation are coming to see the traditional, community-based way of life as old-fashioned and backward. Dolma has seen the consequences of the breakdown of the family in the West. In particular, what it means to be on your own in old age. She is very keen to prevent things from going the same way in Ladakh. For centuries, the insurmountable mountain ranges of the Himalayas protected Ladakh from the influence of the outside world. Colonialism never reached this far, so the indigenous culture remained relatively intact. The first major change came as late as 1974, when the area was thrown open to tourism and development. Helena Norberg Hodge first visited Ladakh at the same time. It was a visit that was to change her life. Ever since, she has been helping the Ladakhis to withstand the pressures of modernization.
And I realized that the Ladakhis just didn't have any information about what was coming in. And that included, the most educated, wise people using an old DDT container for a salt shaker, or people baking their bread directly on asbestos. And there was no information about the fact that in the West, people were abandoning these things. So I realized there was a real role for a Westerner to try to help bridge this information gap.
Ladakh is no longer the paradise that it was 30 years ago. The forces of change include tourism. It provides a few Ladakhis with a cash income, but at the same time it presents a real threat to the people's cultural identity.
One of the worst effects that I've seen of the global economy on Ladakh is the way that it makes people feel inferior. The reason that happens is because they're getting all these impressions about life in the West, about a glorious consumer culture where we do no work, where we have infinite amounts of leisure and money to buy all these things. It makes people feel inferior. It makes them feel ugly, backward, stupid. Young people now are using a dangerous skin lightening cream called Fair and Lovely. The dolls that children are given to play with now have blonde hair and blue eyes. The TV and the films show Rambos for the young men as their role models. The end result is a deep sense of inferiority and a psychological desire to imitate the consumer culture and to be seen as respectable modern people.
Market pressures from the outside are threatening to destroy the local economy. Today, food grown on the other side of the Himalayas sells for less than food grown 5 minutes walk away. It doesn't make sense to continue farming. Agriculture is fast becoming uneconomic.
This is one of the biggest problems affecting Ladakh, because subsidized food coming in here is destroying the local market. It's destroying the livelihood of local farmers. This whole region has been dependent on agriculture for 2,000 years, and destroying their market, destroying their ability to produce for themselves is extremely dangerous. Now, as it turns out, this is the dynamic that we call economic growth. Everywhere in the world, it means destroying local food production for local needs. So this is one of the most important things we're doing in Ladakh, is trying to raise awareness about this and trying to strengthen the local markets for local producers.
Dolma and Sewang have the opportunity to reflect on what type of development, what aspects of Western life can bring real and lasting benefit to their communities. Helena has been organizing these reality tours for 20 years, involving a total of more than 50 Ladakhis. Experiencing daily life in the West as it really is, in particular seeing how hard people have to work to make a living, causes participants in the program to see their own way of life in a different light, to appreciate more consciously the strengths of their own culture. The tours are educational, but the Ladakhis' irrepressible good humor ensures that they are also a lot of fun. However bleak the surroundings, the women never lose their joie de vivre. One of the insights that this trip has generated is that wealth is a relative concept. Dolma and Sewang had heard about the fantastic salaries Westerners get, but they hadn't heard so much about the fantastic prices they have to pay. Still, they managed to buy some gifts for friends and family back home. Dolma's husband had asked for a new hat.
I love Dolma and Sewang. We have a real friendship, and I very much enjoy spending time with them. And very, very intelligent, very quick. It's fascinating working with them also and seeing their view on Ladakh and on the West change. And I think they're both very, very powerful women who are having a big, big impact in Ladakh.
Dolma and Sewang are discovering that the streets of the West are not paved with gold. There is real poverty as well as extreme wealth. Thousands of people in London are homeless. What is he doing? Sewang asks.
Well, basically I'm looking for something to eat. I'm hungry. In big cities, the bins have to be emptied every day, so everything that's there has got to be today's anyway, so you can only hope that the amount that's been here before isn't too bad.
She said, well, where do you go to sleep if you really don't have a house at all?
Shop doorways, railway station fronts.
She said, wouldn't your parents give you a house if you wanted a house from your parents?
Well, it doesn't seem that way because my dad thinks I did things wrong a few years ago. I went about things the wrong way.
Witnessing this kind of poverty changes Dolma and Sewang's image of our so-called affluent society. Helena Norberg Hodge is director of the International Society for Ecology and Culture, or ISEC, an action-orientated think tank that promotes alternatives to the global consumer culture. ISEC's projects in the West are managed by her husband, John Page. Some people might think that their tireless commitment is pointless. But it was exactly that idealism that earned Helena and her organization the so-called Alternative Nobel Prize in 1986. The Dalai Lama has given his blessing to ISEC's work, and Indira Gandhi also lent her support.
Well, my dedication to Ladakh has really become a dedication to the knowledge that human beings can live differently. The knowledge that we are not innately as greedy as we are now being made to be through advertising and through pressures on young children that make them feel insecure and inferior. So my work really has become trying to get that message out around the world, that the consumer culture doesn't make us happy. And I would say on the whole that knowledge that I gained from Ladakh, I feel makes me stronger, and I think I have a more optimistic view about human nature and people and about the possibilities for the future.
Ladakh's own future lies to a great extent in the hands of the Women's Alliance, which was founded by Helena and Dolma in 1992. The alliance has more than 5,000 members and is today Ladakh's most respected voice for culturally and ecologically sensitive development.
These days, when I come back, I'm treated like a High Lama or, a state guest, and I get tremendous reception. And this is something new. 20 years ago, they didn't treat me like that. In fact, then there were many people who laughed at me, and that those same people now appreciate what I've been doing, value me as someone who came here and helped them see the value of their own culture. So this recognition of me now is literally a recognition of the value of their own culture.
Once a year, the women organize a festival to celebrate Ladakh's local knowledge and skills. Almost every village is represented, providing an overview of the traditional culture. The Women's Alliance also runs a centre in Leh. A handicrafts shop helps to finance some of their activities. Each year, 25,000 people visit Ladakh. Those that come to the centre take back with them information not only about the region's cultural heritage, but a better understanding of the impact of economic development. At her weekly English class, Tsewang is making progress. Helena was responsible for compiling the first Ladakhi English dictionary, writing the language down for the first time. She is the perfect teacher. In 1983, ISEC established the Centre for Ecological Development. For schools, visiting the centre is now an established part of the curriculum. With 350 days of sun a year, Ladakh is the ideal place for solar technology.
So we started demonstrating a whole range of alternative technologies based on solar, wind and water. And we found that introducing these technologies costs far less money than using the centralized petroleum-based technologies that are being brought in all over the third world.
The Ecology Group employs about a dozen Ladakhis in its workshop, manufacturing solar cookers, hydraulic ram pumps and small-scale water turbines. ISEC's development philosophy is based on helping people to help themselves.
Everything we're doing is using local resources, local knowledge, local skills, and the end result is that it's a development that's adapted to local needs and that create jobs. It doesn't cause the sort of urbanization and joblessness that conventional development creates. And it really works. So it's really wonderful to know that you can find a type of development where a traditional culture can meet the modern world without destroying either the environment or the social fabric.
Solar cells and batteries for lighting. There are more than 600 installations like these in 100 villages. The government pays for a good part of the cost. Another of ISEC's activities in the villages is a farm project, a type of reality tour for foreigners. Richard, from the UK, is one of the many Westerners living and working with a Ladakhi family. Participants gain first-hand experience of the psychological and economic pressures on the Ladakhis to move away from the land, while learning something of the joys of community and shared work. At the same time, they help to restore respect for farming, which many young Ladakhis are starting to reject as primitive, even shameful. Helena often visits the host families to help with the language and make sure everything is going well.
And for the Westerners, it's usually a life-changing experience. They're living in a society where things are still of a human scale. They see that small-scale agriculture can be very, very productive, far more productive than large monoculture. And they also get to see what it's like to live in an extended family. And what we're really doing is providing a cultural bridge, a deep level of cultural exchange. And I believe that's the only way that we're going to prevent cultural breakdown and the rise of terrorism and fundamentalism. So I think it's very important, this project.
A visit to the supermarket is in Dolma and Sewang's schedule. Huge freezers full of frozen foods. Row after row of plastic packaging. A very different experience from shopping back home.
We're trying to show them that in the West, these products are full of artificial coloring and preservatives and packaging, and those products cost less than local products. So I'm explaining to them that because our governments subsidize long-distance transport and trade, something that comes from 10,000 miles away costs less than something that comes from 1 mile away.
Hard hats for the next stop on the tour, to see some of the environmental costs of the supermarket culture.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The area that you can see that we're tipping in, which is from there, that bank across to the edge over there,
Yeah.
we started tipping in there in March of this year.
Wow. Wow.
And to totally fill that area
Yeah.
will take us until the end of December this year.
Every day, 170 lorry loads end up here, a very visible end result of a very wasteful and polluting economy.
It's unbelievable how much rubbish you produce. In Ladakh too, we are beginning to see a real problem with waste. I'm so happy that the Women's Alliance managed to ban plastic carrier bags. It's a very important first step. I'm just shocked. I've never seen such enormous amounts of rubbish all at once. And all those machines.
But Helena also tries to communicate the positive aspects of Western life, showing how there is a whole movement towards sustainable ways of living and more natural products.
This is just what we use in our cushions in Ladakh. The same sort of grass. I can't believe how expensive it is here.
This is exactly like the Ladakhi wool, like the homespun and home woven wool. Sok temba. Nambu sok mera dasa. Ina nyuwaza, temba nyuwaza. Man ina azuk. So Dolma is saying that this in Ladakh would cost 800, but here the equivalent is 16,000. So it shows how much the stuff they have is valued. It's really important for them to see shops like this because it shows them that Westerners are willing to pay 2 times as much, 3 times as much, lots of money to have natural products. And natural products is what they have in Ladakh naturally.
As Helena sees it, one of the most important initiatives in the West today is the local food movement. A visit to one of London's farmers' markets shows that there are alternatives to the inefficient and damaging ways of the global food economy.
None of them are sprayed with chemicals and so on. No.
Dolma and Sewang have seen a lot, and they have come to see the West in a very different light. Shortly after their return, they have the opportunity to share their experiences. A new women's group has formed in the small village of Palam and has invited Dolma and Sewang to talk to them. They are given a warm welcome. It is a big event for the village. In this tent, the reality tour comes full circle. The message the women of Palam are about to hear will counter the false impressions that have led many Ladakis to see their own culture as inferior. It's a message that helps to restore self-respect.
At first I was just amazed. Everything was so different. But soon I didn't like it. People there don't have any time. Everybody is rushing without talking to each other. We always think that people in the West are the ones who are rich, but in many ways we are much better off. If you don't have time to rest, you cannot be happy. We met people who'd lost their jobs and now live on the streets. I told them that in Ladakh we've lived together for generations. When I look at life in the West, I think we're very lucky to be able to live our lives the way we do.
Dolma and Sewang's message is very well received. The meeting is sealed with a dance, the custom in Ladakh.
I would never want to live in the West. I just can't imagine it. Here, living on your own is the worst thing that can happen to someone, the saddest thing. In the West, a lot of people seem to be lonely and completely isolated and totally without any joy in their lives. Honestly, I wouldn't want to have to live there. I couldn't imagine living in the West, leaving my family, giving up my friends and relatives. The price would be too high. No matter how much money I earned or how comfortably I lived, I could never do that. Ladakh is where I belong.
For Helena, Ladakh has become a second home. 3 decades ago, she came here as a stranger. Today, the Ladakis have adopted her as one of their own.
The most important thing I've learned from Ladakh is the importance of community, of having deep, long-lasting relationships with other people, of not living in such an isolated and cut-off way. And I've learned also about the importance of having daily contact with the natural world, with animals, with the grass, with the soil. I've learned that that's what makes me more happy, and I think that's true for most people. Those deep, long-lasting relationships to people and to nature, that's what makes us happy.